What's up, y'all? Kyle here. I wanted to jump on first thing and give you a bit of an update on a story that I told in our last podcast. So you might remember towards the end of the episode, I told a story about a friend of mine who I'm working with. He had bilateral total knee replacement. His right knee, regaining his quadriceps function has been a nightmare. And we've tried everything I could think of, from BFR to neuromuscular stem to BFR combined with neuromuscular stem to just getting a sufficient volume at a light load to eccentrics to interferential current to distract his head, all the different things, that I know to do. The only thing we didn't do was some cold application prior to trying to train his quad, and we just, time constraints kind of prevent that. But the interferential current should sort of help tease that out. And to be fair, like if I'm really critical of everything, nothing really seemed to do what we needed it to do, which essentially meant that we were unable to give his quad a sufficient stimulus. So 3-4 months ago now, we tried training his knee extensors in a hip extended position. So if you think about the traditional like long arc quad machine, if you will, you're seated, so your hip's at 90 degrees. So we got his hip extended. So you could do this either by lying supine on a table, then letting your knee bend over the end of a table, and then fixating a load to the ankle or the foot. What we do is we actually lie him prone on a weight bench, and then we rig up the cable column to kind of place the load through his foot and ankle. And so we've just been training his knee extensions in that fashion. In the first day we tried it, he immediately was able to produce more force than I'd ever seen him produce in the traditional long arc quad type manner. So we've been loading him up. We had the holidays, all that stuff that kind of goes into that. So that's been getting in the way of us consistently working together. His job changed. So we had a lot of different little things kind of popping up. And so yesterday we had a little bit more time when I was working with him, and my head's just kind of freed up a little bit. And I'm like, we actually really need to kind of test and see where you're at in terms of strength, because I can tell he's stronger, but I'd kind of like to know like how he compares back to, say, 3-4 months ago when we started doing this. So 3 to 4 months ago, he probably had a 1 rep max of 20 pounds on a knee extension machine. And this is a 6'5", 6'6", 250-pound guy that's lean, and full of muscle, and his 1 rep max is 20 pounds. That dog don't hunt, if you follow that reference. So yesterday, after training in this hip extended position for 3-4 months tops, he got a 4 rep max of 80 pounds. And we both were just like, holy smokes, that's awesome. Like that's the stuff that just kind of, reinforces we're on the right path. We're doing the right thing. Things can keep getting better. And it was just really cool. And so it just happened yesterday. Today's February 20th. We're headed to CSM Wednesday. So come see us, come get a t-shirt. And it was just kind of fresh on my mind. And I thought, maybe some of you might be interested in hearing that, and if you weren't and you just skipped all of this, then that's okay too. I'm fine either way. We'll kick it over now to our little intro, and then we've got our podcast with Dr. Shane Scholten.
This is the Owens Recovery Science Podcast.
All right, everyone, it's been a minute. Welcome back to the Owens Recovery Science Podcast. This is the first of 2023, right, Kyle?
It is.
I think,
first of 2023, and I think 52.
52, baby.
Oh.
All right. Dude,
Yeah,
guess who's
magic number
52?
You
This
are.
guy.
That
Yes,
guy.
this is Ian.
And
Oh, my God.
forehead's
Don't even
getting
talk
bigger.
Don't even talk about what? At my stomach. It's all getting bigger.
I get to say that because I have all forehead.
I'm getting a haircut, and that's part of it. The more you're losing your hair, the less you don't want a lot of hair on top. So I'm getting a haircut later today. But yeah, man, it's been a minute because we've been busy, dude. can I just reflect on my last week with you here?
I would actually really enjoy for you to.
So I start off that I'm part of the Human Performance Advisory Board for Special Forces. So we're out there at the Air Force Academy trying to look like a tough, Special Forces 52-year-old dad guy, talking.
Yeah.
Get done with that and then fly home and then immediately have to fly out the next morning to my daughter's cheerleading competition in Disney. So I went from like trying to be cool, tough guy to I had to put on my, I never dreamed I'd be a sexy cheer dad, but here I am killing it t-shirt and my Mickey ears. And spent all weekend at Disney back home. And then we had this, we're not going to get into it, but oh my God, this crazy stuff, crisis with our accounting or whatever that's going on right now. And then freaking CSM next week.
I know. When I just got back, I took a quick trip to Texas to see the fam. I didn't get to see my brother at Christmas.
Yeah, so just out like having fun.
I shot out there to see him.
Yeah. So, well, I'm excited for CSM. We have a couple talks going on there. I do freaking CSM. Thanks again, jerk offs, for having my talks on the last day, so they can just live in the back of my head.
Jerk offs, Johnny.
The entire time everyone else is done, want to have fun. But the good news is we're staying on a boat, so that's going to be cool. Instead of an Airbnb, we got a boat in the marina. So we'll send out the link to which boat it is, so everyone at CSM can meet us down there. See what it's like. All right.
Party on the.
I'm a little nervous about it.
The ORS houseboat.
Yeah,
for sure.
Then we got the NFL Combine like a couple weeks after that.
Yep.
And then the arthroscopy conference. It's freaking conference season, man. It's nuts. So
that one's in New Orleans, right?
New Orleans.
So that'll be good.
My 6-minute long talk I'm going to give.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
How many slides?
Every talk is 6 minutes. 32. All right. So we couldn't have a better guest and a better topic for our kickoff of 2023. This is gonna be cool because at the Air Force advisory thing, this was one of the main topics that a lot of people were asking about was ischemic preconditioning, especially for potential with the high elite level war fighters, and how it might assist with any sort of performance things or recovery type things. And so this guy today is taking an IPC, I think, to a new level, because he's breaking down a bazillion of the questions that we've had, such as, what's the timing? You've got these different windows with IPC. What about LOP? Forever, people would just choose one pressure like 220. And, for a guy like you with kind of adiposity, skinny legs, 220 is probably too much pressure. But for massive, giant thighs, for real, my LOP is typically like 260, 280. Fat dad thighs. And so 220 if we're saying that IPC needs 100% occlusion, that's not something. But then also, I think what's also really cool is like, what does it work best for? Like for a quick, fast glycolytic 10-second bout, a little bit of a shorter bout of not really aerobic, a different time frames. I'm stumbling
because
now.
if you just say performance, like you hear a lot, people extrapolate a lot of different things from that,
it's like recovery.
Exactly. It's just so broad. So
let's shut up. Let's let the expert talk about it now. So it's a friend of ours, Professor Shane Scholten. Shane, I've always just called you Shane, but Scholten, I'm saying that last name right.
You can say it Scholten, like school.
Scholten. Okay. Damn it. I knew I was wrong. Scholten. So he's program director of exercise and sports sciences at Augustana University. He's up there in Sioux Falls. Teaches quite a bit there: biomechanics, nutrition, exercise leadership, fitness administration, science and exercise. This freaking guy, Kyle. Did you see his last thing he does?
He
also teaches cultural and outdoor adventures in Costa Rica. He country dropped us in his email. He's like, I can do it, but these days I'm going to be in Costa Rica teaching my culture and outdoor adventures classes. So
we had to delay the recording because Dr. Scholten was in Costa Rica.
It's like Halverson, he's always in Brazil. Like, hey, you're talking to him. I'm working. It's like, sounds like you're at the beach. He's like, no, it's not the beach. So anyways, Shane, welcome. We're going to break down. He's got 3 studies coming out. One's already out. 2 more are about to come out on IPC for performance. So Dr. Scholten, welcome.
Yeah, it's going great, guys. I appreciate you delaying your podcast for a month just for me so I could get back from teaching students all the cool stuff we can do from the exercise science standpoint in Costa Rica.
Is that what do you do down there?
Yeah, so it's the cultural and outdoor adventures of Costa Rica. So being exercise science and loving the adventure part, we'll go down there because it's warm, right, in January. And it's not in South Dakota. So we can do surfing, for example, and we look at some of the mechanics of surfing. Require the students to read some peer-reviewed research so they know the pop-up to get on surfing and why that's important. And of course, we study the friction on the surfboard because if you've thought about it, you're like, how do you get friction on a surfboard? It's wet and we put wax on it, and how does that cause friction? And we do several other things too. When you get to the real part of Costa Rica, you just don't want to be downtown San Jose, but we want a bike ride for 30 miles on gravel. When there's the inclines and declines are 7 to 17% grade. And we have a great time for 30 miles and see who can complete it. It's a good physical and mental challenge.
I need to enroll in your class, man.
Yeah,
so you got room for one more? Although I surfed one time and I learned that wax really rips your chest hair out. It was terrible.
Yeah, we got to get you a rash guard shirt.
The rash guard. I didn't have that. So give us a little of your background, man. Why you got into exercise science? Sounds like you're a sporty guy.
Yeah. Undergrad, I was a sprinter hurdler, and that was a lot of fun. And went on to grad school, studied some biomechanics of human movement down at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. That was fantastic. Got interested in the research part there with Dr. Nick Sturgio. He was a really fantastic mentor to get me to launch that career. Went on to do some clinical rehabilitation and cardiac rehab. After that, went into physical therapy, and I was a co-owner of a physical therapy and fitness business, and then got into higher education because I realized I really like change. I like to be able to progress through different things, different interests. So for example, teaching, it's different classes, it's different students that goes along, and I get to be creative, like creating class for Costa Rica. And the research part too, when you find something that's working, then there's a lot of things in the exercise science world that don't work well. If you think about supplements and how many that are advertised to make you a all-star performer, but most probably don't work. So there's a lot of things to study and discover there. So that's probably the very quick synopsis of my background in getting into higher education.
Why'd you get into IPC?
Yeah, IPC. So this is kind of funny. Maybe it's about 12 years ago. A guy here in Sioux Falls came into our offices. There's a couple of us faculty, and he was just curious. He wasn't a student, and he just said, "Hey, how in the world, or how does this? When I put this tourniquet on my arm, it appears to enhance my lifting." And we kind of looked at each other, and we're like, "This guy's crazy. There's no way. You're cutting off blood flow, and you're trying to lift weights. That doesn't sound like it should help at all." So we kind of dismissed it at that point. And then a few years later, I had a good occupational therapist friend of mine who had come to speak to my introduction to exercise science class, and he couldn't that year. And so he recommended one of his coworkers, Brett Nowotny, to come in and speak. He's a physical therapist. And he came in and he's talking about this blood flow restriction stuff, some of the research that he's done, and some of the IPC. And I thought, this is pretty interesting. He's got some good research here that certainly shows some promise to work in. At that time, my research was kind of winding down on vitamin D and performance, looking at, so I'd recruit. In South Dakota, we can easily find people who are deficient in vitamin D. And so I'd recruit them and then supplement them with vitamin D to get them to a high blood levels of serum vitamin D, and then retest them for physical performance. And what I learned is we're really good at retest reliability because their performance didn't change at all with a lot more vitamin D. So, and I wouldn't tell the coaches that either. Their performance wasn't improving in 8 weeks, but we're really good retesters. So anyway, I was looking for something new, and I thought, well, let's explore the research. Let's see what's out there regarding blood flow restriction and IPC. And from my research, doing the lit reviews, I figured IPC is the way to go. There's some pretty neat stuff there.
Awesome. Yeah, Brett's a great dude. He's part of our group. We let him do our courses because he's up there in North Dakota and South Dakota because none of us can handle your winters. So
I know that I learned real quick that Dr. Scholten is an excellent teacher because he taught me that Augustana University is actually in South Dakota, not Florida. On our last podcast, we or maybe I thought Augustana was in South Dakota.
Yeah, it sounds like St. Augustine, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know.
Our good athletic trainers that had a question for you guys in that last podcast.
Yeah, that was one of their people. Too funny.
So let's get into your studies then. So, Brett linked you up. You got interested in trying to see, okay, vitamin D didn't seem to move the performance needle. Let's see if this thing called ischemic preconditioning moves the performance needle. And now when these 3 papers come out, you're going to be kind of one of the leaders in understanding some of the nuances. But give your breakdown of what you think IPC. Well, first, I think most people listening to this podcast know what it is, but how you apply it and what we think might be happening from a performance standpoint.
Sure. I've always stuck to the leg tissue, upper thigh, proximal part of the leg, and did the traditional 5 minutes of occlusion using the Delphi units, and then 5 minutes of reperfusion. And we would have 2 units, one on the right leg, one on the left leg, so we could alternate those, try to just keep that moving along. Initially I was looking at, is there a potential for a neuro response in that? So I thought a good place to look at that was sprint and power athletes. Let's choose some measurements that are like a flying 10, where the athlete, the sprinter, gets this run up this acceleration phase, and then we test their fastest 10 meters, from a timing device. Did that pro agility drill. We did the long jump and broad jump. We did a reactive strength index. That's where you hop off a box and how fast can you jump up to the next box. And we time the amount of time that the foot is on the ground for that one. So we thought that'd be pretty good. And the vertical jump was on that too. But is IPC going to help with any type of neuro piece on that? We also
so these are very fast twitch, short duration, less than 10 seconds, kind of like just power fast go tests that you're looking at.
Yeah. Most of them are right around a second or even less.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing, the question that I had was how much time from IPC to the performance would be necessary, and we chose IPC and then go right into the warm up and then perform, versus IPC, wait for 20 minutes and then go into the performance to see if there was, see what was going on there for a timing. There's, on a different note there's the timing where we're in the protective windows where they talk about for heart disease related types of things, but that 24 to 48 hour, those windows that you guys have talked about before too.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really too concerned on that. Although it would be kind of cool to do a study to see, when we can find things that work, can we do it in 24 hours or even 48 hours in advance and still find that positive benefit? That would be a pretty cool study to do as well. So, but yeah, ultimately here, that first one, we just want to test the theory that IPC, would provoke an overshoot in the afferent neural drive from those motor neurons. Is this doing anything? So,
and these types of tests would tease that out, simply because if that were a thing, it'd be there immediately, versus maybe like something in the blood might take a bit of time. Is that kind of
that's
where the headspace is?
That thought process would be.
Yeah. So almost like a post-activation potentiation type scenario.
Yeah, maybe something similar to that.
Okay.
Yeah. I was also interested too in looking at muscle oxygen saturation. So we would use a Moxie device and put that distal to the cuff, just to try to measure that during the IPC timeframe and just kind of look at that. And we didn't go into publishing all that data, but that was just more of a curiosity, which kind of leads to some future stuff that we're going to as well. But we kind of saw, again, this is not published, but we thought it appeared on general to be, it took about 4 minutes for muscle oxygen saturation to get to 0. That's measured by a NIRS device. So there's certainly some limitations there. It's not the entire muscle. It's getting to about maybe a centimeter or so deep into the tissue.
Yeah.
Certainly gives us a nice little picture of that effective occlusion. But ultimately, we're kind of disappointed. I had some students helping me out with that study, and because nothing happened, and they worked so hard. We had 17 participants recruited, and there was 4 conditions for each person. It's a ton of work all summer long. So I thought, we got to try to find something positive. So, in the research, there was a 3-minute cycling time trial, indoor, like, well, they said this worked, so let's see if we can make this work. And so we did that at the end, and like, wow, there was a little improvement there. That's what we're going to do next summer. So that's going to be the next one.
So you're saying for the first study, this worked as well as vitamin D?
Yeah. It's as well as vitamin D. Welcome to my world. The world of exercise science research.
This one, because I know the sham protocol you used, and this one, did you use the low pressure sham or did you use the 100% occlusion sham? Because that was a pretty cool way to go at it.
Yeah, this one was the low pressure sham.
Okay.
So I forget if we used 20 or 50 millimeters of mercury for that low pressure, and you interview your participants as they're doing that, and they kind of know that it's a sham because you're like, hey, this cuff, I moved a little bit, I stood up or sat back down, I just need to adjust, and the cuff moved.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they kind of know what's going on. So is it a true sham or not? Was kind of that question.
Yeah, well, you corrected that in a pretty cool way when we talk about these next studies. I love that.
Yeah.
So okay, it didn't work for these fast little things. So if you're going to go do something that's a couple seconds long, according to your work, this didn't seem to move that neuromuscular needle. Didn't suppress the alpha motor neuron, whatever we're looking at that increases this kind of motor recruitment. You did see LOP was higher than the 220, I think, in this study as well for some of your people.
Yeah, I think that was maybe about 25% of the people, maybe a 30% actually required an LOP greater than 220 millimeters of mercury. And so I was glad that we're using that Delphi device to find out what that total occlusion pressure is required to be, because otherwise we might have had some people that weren't fully occluded, and then perhaps it's not a true IPC protocol.
Yeah.
Then.
Yep. We pretty much understand IPC should be 100% occlusion from the organs side as well as this side. Okay, well, let's get into some that actually worked now.
Yeah,
we're done with vitamin D. We're done with short burst things. Come on. We need some good news here, Dr. Shane.
I hear you. Yeah, so we continue on to the 3-minute. And again, this is all informed by just perusing that lit review, finding everything you can and what's kind of working, what's not working, and you make your tables, you put that together just to guide your research. So we came down to let's try 3 minutes, because that definitely has been shown, and it's longer than the 1 second stuff. And it's, if there's an effect that's related to aerobic metabolism, then we need to be a little bit longer than this 1.5 to 2 minutes in that area for looking at energy systems. And then we chose 6 minutes too, just to double it. Really not, as I say, you need to utilize the research to inform your choices. I don't know that was necessarily informed by research. It was just twice as long. Let's see if it still works.
Let's just double it.
This one goes to 11.
So
this one, the first one you did this is sprinting, not the swimming, right? We're talking sprints now.
Yeah, we're talking sprint cycling right now.
Okay. So sprint cycling,
for 3 minutes and 6 minutes is what we chose for durations. indoor on a Wahoo kicker device. Those are super cool to operates with an app, easy.
Yeah. Super cool to say too.
I
Wahoo!
was going to say, I just see that being the great, on the exercise chart at the clinic, Wahoo kicker.
Yeah.
It
Sounds like a bar somewhere in Southern California.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, so we did a randomized crossover study. The other kind of neat thing I liked about doing the 3-minute and 6-minute is it gives us, you take those people in and we, if there's going to be a benefit, do they benefit both on the 3-minute and 6-minute, or just feel a little bit more confident when we can repeat some of those things, because that'll occur the way we set up that first study too. Everybody was doing it in duplicate. So if it just happens once, as a scientist, I'm not always convinced. I want to see it done again.
And you looked at the windows again on this one, 0 to 20?
Not on this next one.
Okay.
No, because we didn't see an effect on the windows. Well, I guess we shouldn't have, because it was neuromuscular. So we didn't look at the windows on this one. Our other unique thing we wanted to do was I wanted to tackle this sham because I don't remember the author. They had suggested a 1-minute full occlusion for a sham.
Yeah, Cruise, I think. Yeah.
And so we thought, hey, let's try that, because that sounds fantastic. It's certainly given that discomfort for a minute versus the 5 minutes. So they think, there's the participants then are told, hey, this works, but we want to be able to see if we can shave some time off of this, because when you're doing 5-minute occlusions, reperfusions, this has taken a long time, 30 to 45 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think practically, how likely is an athlete actually going to use this? I mean, if it's something that's going to take 45-minute process to do, they might not do it.
Right.
Totally.
So anyway, we found that 8 of 11 improved their time in the 3-minute time trial, 10 of 13 improved their time in the 6-minute time trial. So I really like showing those numbers. It wasn't that just 2 of them were super responders and really raised that average. The majority of our athletes were having some smaller improvements. Again, the pressure. This one, 30% of our participants needed LOP greater than 220 millimeters of mercury. So for the 3-minute time trial, a 4% average power increase over that 3 minutes. The 6-minute time trial, it dropped a little bit to, I think it was about 2.5% increase in average power output.
But I think you had a badass quote. What was it, Kyle? You put it in our notes there that, what was it? 0.5% increase?
0.5%. For like a highly trained athletic competitor, a change of 0.5% can separate metal from non-metal positions.
Yeah, we took that one step further, and I'll just kind of jump ahead, but we'll come back. Our next study was in swimming, and we saw just a 0.9% improvement, but we took that into our conference that has 9 women's teams. And if we would take the 200 free, and if 6th place improved by 0.9%, that puts them on the podium that year. And second place not only would have won, but they would have set the conference record at just that 0.9% improvement. And so it's a pretty big deal. And it's
worth your 30 minutes of laying there.
Yeah, you'd think so, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
What do we think from pathways on why it works maybe differently when you're using kind of oxygen versus the fast glycolytic? What do you think?
So we didn't do any like physiological measurements on that. We didn't do any blood draws or muscle biopsies. I'm not ready for that yet. What do I think? Yeah, if it's aerobic metabolism in nature, we need to get to a little bit that longer term. Maybe there's some glucose uptake challenges or differences, enhancements with IPC. That's certainly a probability based on a paper that was you guys recently talked about even. Maybe we do see a hyperemic response after that. That maybe lasts for about 30 seconds, a minute, whatever it was that we would see with the muscle oxygen saturation. That certainly spikes, but that directly isn't occurring 40 minutes later when they're doing their performance either. But perhaps there's a mechanism there that could be explored.
So in this one, then the majority, both 3 and 6 minutes, we did see an improvement.
Yep, we did.
And then you rolled it into swimming, basically the same thing. Time frames are similar, 3 to 6 minutes, 200 meter versus what was it?
500 meters.
500,
yards.
okay.
Yeah, we have a yard pool.
Yard. Sweet. Y'all use yards, not meters?
It's
hell yeah. I hate the metric system. That's good, man. You got real Americans up there.
That's right.
In Augustana. All right.
It's enough to make those pools an extra couple yards longer to be a meter pool.
Okay. So same design, same sham, 100%, and then 3 rounds, 5 minutes, 100% IPC, and then repeat those 2.
Yeah, and the main reason for going from cycling to swimming is this is real life now. It's in a pool. It's functional. It's their race. No, we didn't do this before races. We did it in a research type of setting. But that, if you think about the practicality of the Wahoo kicker, 3 minutes and 6 minutes, cyclists are not racing for 3 or 6 minutes. So I have a little bit of issue with my methods, but I wanted to find a spot where this is working. So like, hey, let's take this to swimming, where there's a little bit more variability. It's more real world like what's going to happen. So this was pretty neat. We saw statistical improvement of that 0.9% in time. Then faster times with the IPC on the 250-yard swim. But for the 500-yard swim, we lost the statistical significance. And my thought for that is that there's just more variability.
Yeah.
Certainly that's a known, that's a factor, right? There's more turns at the wall. There's just more time for different things to be hidden. I mean, if you make a stumble in a marathon, you might not even notice it on your time, even if you fell down. You can certainly recover from that. You're not going to see it.
Yeah, it didn't hit significance, but you did trend overall there. I think it was like a second faster for the group at that 500 meters. So,
yep. And again, what was really neat though for the swimmers, and we saw that with the cyclists too, and I think it was even more so for the 200-yard swimmers, that what was it? All but 1 or 2 improved their time, but it was by a smaller amount. And so as a researcher, that's what gets me excited, because it's occurring in almost every participant. And this is definitely a randomized crossover study. Everybody's blinded to that. And so it's super exciting. We're getting small changes, but it's pretty consistent across the board with these athletes. In other words, we're not having too many non-responders.
Yeah.
That makes me really excited for that.
I mean, it's pretty similar to that, the other swimming study that I can never remember the lead author.
Out of Toronto.
Yeah. Where they then took the blood and kind of
into the
animals. Mice. Yeah. Animal. Very, very similar in terms of just like the number of participants that improved and whatnot. So
they had 2 non-responders. They actually got worse, but the majority, they all show some change.
Yeah.
From your athlete's perspective, then when they do this, because like a swimmer's pretty dialed in, they know what their times are typically. What do they think? Are they excited? Like, dude, I need to use this thing now, or?
Well, I can tell you that the swimmers went with me to Costa Rica this last January. That's a big deal because January is their competitive season. So the women got back from Costa Rica, and we did some swimming there. We were 3 to 4 days a week. They got back and they had 2 weeks before their conference meet, and they won conference.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're pretty excited about stuff. We're not using it exclusively. I need you guys to develop an IPC unit on the bus ride. I'm thinking, with these charter buses, they have air brakes on them. And I think we could plug into that. So while we're on our bus ride, we could be doing some.
It just drops down like the mask on the airplane.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me call the Delphi engineers on this one. Might have an FDA thing, but we'll see. So did you use it during their conference, or can you say that?
No, I'm not going to say that. I'll just say that we didn't use it yet. So, but certainly from NCAA's point of view, it's not illegal to use. So it's certainly okay to use, and it's safe. We've certainly shown that with lots of different things. So,
yeah. What do you know? We always get this question. Everyone has different thoughts. Bilateral versus just unilateral, especially using a big muscle group like a leg. You know, a lot of stuff in the cardiac world is just one limb. What do you think? Do you think we need both sides?
My thought is the more muscle, again, this is reading research, more muscle that we can occlude, the better shot at a benefit that we would see, or any whatever it is, if it's the cellular signaling, whatever is going on. So I like more muscle the better. So I really like those legs versus the arms on swimmers. Nobody complained about discomfort so much for the swimmers while they were swimming. They never felt fatigued, anything like that. So it was very well tolerated. You reminded me a little bit earlier when we're talking about potentially using it for swimmers. I will definitely say I've used it for track athletes. I tried the application on that for indoor track 800-meter runners. We're for the females, they're running about 2 minutes 15 seconds or so. But this is just anecdotal type stuff. I'm not putting in a research study yet, but it was a challenge it'd be a challenge to do it research wise, because if you can do it back-to-back meets, Saturday to Saturday, that'd be pretty cool to do. But the problem is 800, there's more than just there's more variabilities there. There's competitors that are running into you that you're jockeying for that key position in the lanes. You might get in a slow heat or a faster heat, and there's just other variables that then you're like, well, I certainly can't say it was only one thing, whatever it was, even if it was just extra glucose intake or hydration intake before the race or whatever they did. There's so much variability there. So I was struggling a little bit with that. I did have a mile runner though that did it, and he mentioned I had, again, anecdotal, probably shouldn't even be saying it, but he's like, at the end of the race, and it was one of his PRs that he'd set, and I had just a great amount of energy at the end. This was kind of surprising. It wasn't expected. So maybe there's something there, but that's kind of where we need to go to find this practical use of it if we want to use it more often. Certainly in the lab, we see that it is a benefit, but that's so regimented. That's why we do the research in the lab. But if we can do it in the field, in the weight room, things like that, then we can really see a broader use for it. That's really important, that people are going to get super excited about.
Yeah, and seeing that everything seemed to get some improvement. Are you just going to start sticking to this kind of 3-minute duration and 6-minute duration type events?
It would, the trouble going longer than the 6 minutes or so, depending on the activity, if there's a lot of variability there, the research part of it will be challenging to find that key difference, unless we can make it a little bit bigger. But that's what we struggle with in, I'll say, athletics or in performance. There's, again, just going back to that variability of other factors. But still, these athletes are using multiple things. If we know there's some benefit at the 3 or 6 minute, if a race is taking 3 minutes or longer, much longer, seems to me that would be a good reason to use it, because there's a lot of other things they're doing that isn't improving their time by 1% that they're doing anyway. I think this certainly has some good application in the performance world.
I think like you pointed out in your first paragraph of the swimming one, like the fancy little suits they wear, that's a 1.8% improvement. And if this is also 1%, that's a nice little double dip.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm curious on the rest period with IPC. Does it really need to be 1-to-1? That's what we see. I feel like a lot of the teams manipulating is the rest period to just shrink the duration down, so that the athlete will stay there longer and complete the treatment, and so how low could you go on that side of things would be interesting. So
I think what we're always concerned about there is just the the medical part of it. We just want to make sure there's no blood clots, anything cardiovascular related. If we had that assurance that life is good, then we could, I think we'd be excited to lower those rest periods.
Clinically, we're doing a minute break, it's kind of our, it's in the Delphi machines. That was just kind of as a safety feature, but most of us are okay, I think, after a minute, just going back at it again and doing it for 3 to 4 different muscle groups once they're kind of attenuated to it.
Yeah.
So what's your next goals?
Yeah, the next goals is I want to continue exploring the practicality of it in performance. I've got a lot of track athletes pretty close to there. So I've got Division II performers here that are readily accessible, and they're always eager to help out with some of this research. So also thinking on that, that 5-minute occlusion, does it have to be 5 minutes? We're talking about the rest time being less. And I don't know why I didn't think about this earlier, but if we do some contractions, maybe some little leg extensions during that occlusion, we could hit that 0 muscle oxygen saturation a little sooner. And I don't know if that would be okay. The exciting thing is I found a 3-minute time trial that's statistically significant and it works. And I'm pretty convinced that it does work, definitely, and is repeatable. It absolutely is. So now that I have a known thing that works, now we can start playing with other variables and tweak some other things.
Totally. I love that. That's cool.
That's cool, man. We don't get to say that very much.
But people aren't real interested most times in making these little small changes, and seeing, because it's laborious. It takes a lot of time, and so kudos to y'all for kind of going down that road for sure.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. This was 3 years of work we just discussed here.
I know. When I first started talking to you, I lived in a different house. That's how long ago it was. I remember talking to you. I was sitting in my living room in my old house. So that's very cool, man. What about, our buddy Stephen Patterson? He's been looking at this from a kind of recovery piece. Again, hate that word, but do you have less muscle damage if you do this pre or post? And do you get your MVC back faster? Have you thought about that at all?
I have. Our athletic trainers here are using it quite a bit for recovery. And especially on baseball players, throwers. Putting some cuffs on the arms. And we need to just start collecting some research there. And, the tough part, you talk about taking more time and being a little bit more invasive with institutional review boards. When we start drawing, a muscle biopsy or at least some blood samples, it gets a little bit more challenging. Also requires a little higher level of skill too.
Sure. The cool thing with a baseball player is, measuring pitching velocities and even if you get biomechanics, that's kind of a cool thing. That's a sport that's pretty dialed into something like that.
You talk about dialed in. Oh my goodness, that sport, they've got so many wearables and measurables. That's pretty exciting.
I know. Well, I'm just saying, man, if you start increasing fastball speeds, you and I are looking at lots of trips to Costa Rica together, baby.
All right.
Well, man, this is awesome stuff. I'm glad you're able to have a study, validate it, and we can at least say, and what you've seen, this seems like something that works. Now we just got other little variables to start teasing out and seeing practicality. It's always about practicality.
Yeah, cool. I want it to be useful and more practicality again. Mechanically, that's another thing we need to conquer for team sports. We need more cuffs.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, we hear that a lot.
Yeah.
You need an NFL budget, man.
Yeah, right.
Cool, man. Kyle, you got anything else for Shane?
No, I'm good. That was great. I just kind of look forward to seeing what Dr. Scholten and his crew keep doing up there.
Yeah, and also we need to give kudos to your students. They, it sounds like they did a ton of good work, but it looks like they're gonna get some publications out of this.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. It's I feel like you kind of hit the pinnacle of your academic career when you get to be the last author so many times. That's a lot of fun.
There you go.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, if you see our buddy Brett up there, tell him what's up. Tell him to get back to work. And it's awesome talking with you.
Yeah, I've got him, asked him to speak at an upcoming conference that we have with the Northland American College of Sports Medicine. So we definitely stay in touch.
Okay, sweet. He's an awesome dude.
He is.
Cool. All right, Shay, great talking to you, man. I can't wait to talk to you and hopefully this time next year about all these new studies you have coming out.
Good. Hey, thanks guys a lot. Appreciate you taking the time and helping me share about this good news of some benefits that we've got.
Thanks for listening to the Owens Recovery Science Podcast. Owens Recovery Science is a single source for PTs, OTs, ATCs, DCs, MDs, and other medical professionals seeking certification in personalized blood flow restriction rehabilitation training. Find them online at owensrecoveryscience.com.
One last thing before you get out of here. Quick moment just to say thanks for listening to the podcast. I think we've probably said it 2 or 3 different times now, but we really mean it. But we also want to make sure that you, when you listen to this podcast, that you understand it's not medical advice. We do our best to make sure the information that we give through this podcast is as accurate as it can be, but it should not be used to treat patients. Those decisions need to be made by a physician, by the appropriate rehab clinician, those people that are licensed to care for that individual in that particular state, nation, etc. And so this also goes for any guests that we bring on the podcast. They're not providing medical advice. This information that you have received here as entertainment should not be taken in that way at all. And it should neither be used as expert witness or testimony in any sort of legal proceedings. So thanks for listening to that and understanding that. And we will see you next time. Or wait, we're not going to see. We'll hear. No, we'll listen. You'll hear us. Yeah. Thanks. Okay.